Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named War of the Worlds, Season 3. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Previously on Season 1, a group of aliens from the future who, using advanced technology, wiped out billions of people worldwide. Just as humanity was on the brink of extinction under continuous siege, a professor named Bill discovered that these aliens were actually descendants of humans. He then used the aliens' time-space tunnel to travel back to a time before their arrival on Earth and personally killed the ancestor of these aliens. As a result, Professor Bill single-handedly saved all of humanity. From then on, Earth never suffered another alien attack. Ironically, Professor Bill ended up in prison for murder, because these aliens looked almost identical to humans, with the only difference being a circular mark on their arms, which somewhat resembled the shape of a colossal black hole that appeared in space. It's unknown if there's any connection. Humanity remains in the dark about this. Even so, 2 astronauts on the International Space Station have been assigned to monitor the black hole's data in real time. Astronomer Catherine has proposed a new theory that although the black hole appears to be only a few hundred kilometers in diameter, it may contain another parallel universe inside. The unique wave bands it emits could strongly irradiate the human brain, causing hallucinations. Someone on the scene asked if the collective hallucinations recently experienced by tens of thousands of people are related to the black hole. It turns out that in this world, many people inexplicably possess memories of aliens' past invasions. These events actually occurred in a future world, but present-day humanity is unaware, attributing these experiences to baseless hallucinations. Even Catherine believes this to be true. However, her sister Sophia is trapped in these past memories, unable to extricate herself, and has consequently developed severe depression. She is currently undergoing treatment at a medical facility. Catherine often took time out of her busy schedule to visit her only sibling. A painting hung prominently in the room, and Sophia was certain she had seen it before in a basement in London. But Catherine knew that her sister had never even been to London, and that was just her hallucination. It seemed Sophia's condition was worsening. Catherine could only take her sister outside, hoping the fresh air would help her escape the grip of her delusions. But far from helping, Sophia's condition only deteriorated. Scenes from the future became clearer in her mind. Guided by these memories, she went to the place that had made the deepest impression on her. In the future world, this place was hit first when the aliens arrived, with a multitude of people perishing under the onslaught of intense magnetic radiation. Following Catherine's advice, Sophia had hidden in a cave early on and narrowly escaped disaster. Now, revisiting the spot, the horrific scenes re-emerged before her eyes, including the aliens' weapons of destruction, the robot dogs. Terrified, Sophia stumbled backward, not realizing it was all a hallucination, and was struck by a speeding Tesla truck. The sudden incident left Catherine devastated. Her only family member was gone. While sorting through her sister's belongings, Catherine received an unexpected communication request from an astronaut on the space station. Just recently, while conducting a routine check in space and observing the distant black hole, the astronaut experienced a vivid vision of the space station exploding and breaking apart. Then something even more bizarre happened. A mass of water inexplicably appeared inside the helmet, enveloping the nose and making it nearly impossible to breathe. Fortunately, by flipping over, the astronaut shifted the water's position and narrowly escaped. Subsequent checks showed no fault with the spacesuit, but the experience felt too real, as if being in another world. This coincided with Catherine's theory, so the astronaut immediately contacted her, believing that getting close enough to the black hole could open a time-space tunnel, leading to another parallel universe. Catherine was greatly encouraged after hearing this. If particles could be accelerated to the point of distorting space-time, a micro-black hole could be artificially created, and her parallel universe theory might just be proven right. After receiving the radiation parameters of the black hole from the astronaut, Catherine and her partner set off immediately. They were heading to a public university which boasted the most advanced lab in the country. Catherine's urgency was not just professional. She harbored a personal hope of finding her deceased sister in a parallel universe and reuniting with her. Though it was her first visit to this school, Catherine felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Fleeting memories surfaced, hinting at past events that might have taken place there. This made her even more anxious. Before long, led by the head of the department, they arrived at the underground experimental site, which housed a state-of-the-art particle accelerator. Catherine wasted no time in getting to work. She set the particle frequency to a range close to that of the black hole and cranked up the power to the maximum. To her astonishment, a micro-black hole actually formed. She rushed into the lab and placed her palm in the particle beam, the closest she could be to the black hole. Miraculously, something happened. Catherine, feeling her slightly singed palm, found herself in another room, the very lab she had experienced in the future world. There sat her sister Sophia, pondering the meaning of life. Catherine was overwhelmed with emotion, thrilled by the realization of her theories and the reunion with her sister from beyond the grave. However, her return to reality was swift as her partner turned off the particle accelerator and snapped her out of it. Excited, Catherine recalled some of the physical equations she had seen in the future world, now convinced of the existence of parallel universes. Little did she know, a threat from the parallel world was quietly approaching. The alien leader, in an effort to prevent Professor Bill's plan to kill their ancestor, had also traveled to the present world. These aliens had not only survived the death of their ancestor, but were also persisting with their grand scheme to eliminate humanity. At noon that day, the alien leader infiltrated the police station under the guise of a criminal and suddenly started a killing spree. He aimed to retrieve an alien notebook filled with a multitude of advanced physical formulas. At the end of the previous season, due to the accidental death of an alien, the book ended up unclaimed at the police station. These beings, fearless in the face of danger, brazenly fought back and forth within the precinct, paying no mind to the numerous reinforcements. But in the end, they were overwhelmed, outnumbered. One of the companions was captured due to injuries, while the alien leader managed to escape amidst the chaos. The leader arrived at an abandoned warehouse in the suburbs, likely their temporary base. With the formulas from the notebook, they could once again create a teleportation device. The conflict at the police station soon drew attention from all societal sectors. This woman, named Zoe, was the leader of a resistance group against aliens in the future world. In the present-day reality, she works for the National Security Agency. She was now investigating the police station incident and discovered that both a victim and the captured alien had a circular mark on their hands. This ring wasn't just any symbol. It had already been widely shared online by people with residual memories. Following the online identity information, she intended to meet with those posters to gather more details. Coincidentally, she ran into Martian at this very juncture. This man had narrowly escaped the alien manhunt in the future and had a romantic involvement with the alien progenitor, Emily. For some reason, he retained more memories than most, and he recognized Zoe immediately by name. Astonished by this encounter, Zoe found a place for their further conversation. Martian remembered having seen an alien spaceship with his own eyes, and he and Emily felt an inexplicable familiarity. Upon hearing of her demise in the real world, he burst into tears like a giant baby. During this time, he mentioned Professor Bill. Using her security clearance, Zoe quickly located the facility where Professor Bill was detained and went to see him immediately. Professor Bill had traveled back from the future world and retained his complete memory. He spilled the beans about the alien invasion of humanity, including the reasons why Emily was killed. However, these tales were so fantastic that those who heard him considered the professor to be mad. Even Zoe was skeptical. Fortunately, she had her ways to verify the truth of Bill's story. She then found the alien accomplice, who was in police custody. Although the captive remained silent under interrogation, Zoe confronted the alien with Bill's account, pointing out her identity and her intent to eradicate humankind. The alien, infuriated, attempted to kill Zoe on the spot, but the guards intervened just in time. This incident prompted Zoe to believe Professor Bill's statements. The alien captive, sensing their secrets could be exposed, chose to end her life in the cell. Meanwhile, the aliens had finally completed the construction of their teleportation device using the formulas from the notebook. As it activated, countless birds in the sky were disturbed and fell like dumplings. A black hole in space was undergoing drastic changes, with gravitational waves intensifying rapidly, causing even the space station to experience a brief power outage before eerily returning to normal. The mass death of birds on Earth caught Zoe's attention, prompting her to investigate the vicinity. Martian recognized a building ahead. It looked very familiar. He quickly led Zoe to it, only to discover that it was the abandoned warehouse where the aliens had been developing their teleportation equipment. But by the time they approached, the place was deserted, the aliens and their device gone, leaving nothing but scattered data cables behind. The mysterious appearance of a colossal black hole signaled an impending apocalyptic disaster on Earth. On the other side, Catherine utilized the particle accelerator and created a miniature black hole, which led her to a parallel world in the future. It was a brief visit, but she was incredibly thrilled. This undoubtedly confirmed her theory that parallel worlds exist within black holes. Consequently, Catherine reached out to astronauts on the space station, requesting more data on the black hole. She was determined to create another miniature black hole for another crossing. That same evening, Catherine received observational data sent by the astronauts. They indicated that the parameters of this black hole were much more comprehensive than the last. The astronauts were just as invested because they also believed in the existence of parallel worlds within black holes. Perhaps due to their closer proximity, they had several times foreseen events that would happen in the future world. The sensation of the space station's damage was as if they were right there. With the data in hand, Catherine hurried to the particle lab. After entering all the parameters, the particle accelerator was initiated once again. Just like before, she placed her hand into the particle beam. Catherine's body began to tremble violently, and then the miraculous happened. She arrived once again in the familiar lab. She was certain that this was the parallel world of the future. Unlike her last visit, her sister was not there. After packing the data materials on the table, Catherine left the lab. The humans in this parallel world had been nearly wiped out by aliens, leaving the streets desolate. Catherine noticed a black vortex hanging in the sky, giving her a bad feeling. She quickened her pace, determined to find her sister first. But before she got far, Catherine heard noises from afar. Looking closely, to her astonishment, it was a robot dog made entirely of steel. She hastily hid behind a car. She's shocked because she had never seen such a strange machine. Fortunately, it seemed not to notice her presence and was merely playing with a soccer ball by itself. However, hiding there for long wasn't an option. As the robot dog came closer, playing with the ball, Catherine kicked the damned ball away. Unpredictably, the dog appeared from another direction. Catherine was so scared that she ran for her life. Surprisingly, the robot dog did not chase her after her smell. It simply resumed playing with the soccer ball. It seemed that in this parallel world, even the aliens had lost their dominance, and the robot dog could no longer be controlled. Catherine was ready to press on when she suddenly felt dizzy, as if someone was calling to her. It turns out, back in the real world, the unconscious Catherine had been discovered and was being rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. While in the parallel world, Catherine also faced a crisis as several humanoid figures unexpectedly began shooting at her. Dodging left and right like an agile chicken, she took cover behind a bridge. As they closed in, she glanced at the sky and realized she had been out too long. She needed to return quickly. She remembered that the black vortex above could have severe negative effects on the creatures below. Catherine recalled that her sister had an interest in art, so she headed to the local art center hoping to find her. But the doors were firmly shut, and the interior was securely sealed. As Catherine stood puzzled, a few surviving humans suddenly rushed out, covered her head with a sack, and dragged her toward a back entrance. Once inside the art center, they rifled through Catherine's backpack and then removed her hood. One of them, a man named Richard, froze in shock as he recognized Catherine. Without further explanation, Richard led Catherine to a familiar figure. It was Sophia, the sister she had been desperately searching for. To Catherine's surprise, Sophia was now a mother, and the father was none other than Richard. In the flashback, after escaping from the astronomical research station, most of the soldiers had perished, leaving only Richard to protect the sisters and meet up with Professor Bill. During their long journey, Richard and Sophia had fallen in love and married. Catherine never expected such a twist of fate. She poured out her story, explaining how she came to this parallel world. It took Sophia a great deal of effort to process all the information. Sophia mentioned that ever since Professor Bill had disappeared, everyone assumed his resistance against the aliens had failed because a black hole had appeared in the sky. Initially, no one knew what it was, only that birds would fall from the sky. Eventually, they realized that humans exposed under the black hole for a certain period would suddenly die, likely due to intense radiation from the black hole. Curious, Catherine asked about the aliens. Richard told her that the aliens were also affected by the black hole and the survivors were hiding in bunkers, still keen on eradicating humanity. Catherine had an epiphany. The ones who had shot at her must have been those aliens. Then she remembered the playful robot dog. Richard explained that it too had been affected by the black hole's radiation and was no longer under alien control. Richard then led Catherine to a room where several unconscious humans lay. It turned out they were the main forces who had previously fought against the aliens. When Emily and Sasha boarded the spacecraft, they engaged in a fierce battle with the aliens, and in the end, they all mysteriously fell into comas, with no knowing when they would wake up. Catherine's entire worldview was turned upside down. Meanwhile, in the real world, she was in critical condition. If she were to pass away, it was uncertain whether the parallel world Catherine would die again. Fortunately, besides her, a group of people were gradually uncovering the truth about the alien invasion. Zoe, while looking into the deaths of birds, came upon the alien research lab. Sadly, the place was already deserted. She could only take some photos of the scene to consult with Professor Bill. After a single glance, he identified the device as a Faraday cage, meant to block electromagnetic radiation. Piecing it together with the electromagnetic shocks the aliens had used on humans, Bill conjectured that the remaining aliens might be planning to reset this electromagnetic weapon to annihilate humanity. However, to confirm this, an autopsy on the dead birds was necessary, but Bill was currently imprisoned and couldn't do anything. After much consideration, Zoe decided to break him out of jail. Although the idea was insane, images of alien attacks often flashed through her mind. She then reported all her findings and theories about the aliens to her superior, intending to use official channels to extract Bill from prison. To Zoe's dismay, she was suspended that very evening. Her superior thought she was mentally unstable and needed a psychological evaluation. Machar encouraged her not to give up. What they were doing was a heroic act of saving the world. So the two decided to break into the prison and rescue Professor Bill. But before that, Zoe had to make thorough preparations. Her biggest concern was her own family. In a future parallel world, Zoe's parents were killed in their bedroom, and she was determined not to let history repeat itself. She instructed her father that no matter what happened upon receiving a call, he and her mother must leave the city. She couldn't reveal the specific reasons, but out of absolute trust in his daughter, her father finally agreed to this strange request. Now with no worries holding her back, Zoe pulled the SIM card from her phone, ensuring no one could track her. Machar, on the other hand, had contacted his loyal friends. Even if they managed to rescue Professor Bill, they would need someone to cover their escape. Once everything was in place, Zoe and Machar arrived at the hospital early. They knew that today, Professor Bill would be there for a checkup and x-rays. This presented the perfect opportunity to whisk him away. The duo walked straight into the hospital ward and easily overpowered the accompanying guards with their guns. The professor seemed to anticipate this move, remaining calm as he followed Zoe out of the hospital. However, just as they reached the entrance, they were met by police reinforcements. As the standoff ensued, Zoe suddenly fired a shot, hitting a police officer in the thigh. She quickly called for the two to get in the car, and they sped off towards the highway. Fortunately, their quick getaway allowed them to shake off the police pursuit. In no time, they arrived at an abandoned processing plant where Zoe had prepared a smaller car for them to switch into. After the three of them left, the van they had originally used was set ablaze, eliminating any potential risks. The group swiftly drove to an underground parking lot where Machar's old friend had been waiting for them. Unexpectedly, Bill recognized him immediately. In a future parallel world, this man was stabbed to death by Sasha while protecting Bill. But now, the man couldn't remember anything. They took the elevator and arrived at a massive office space that once belonged to a technology company that had since gone out of business. The facilities were not only complete, but also highly concealed, making it an ideal spot for secret research and experimentation. Machar stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, seemingly lost in thought, as the view outside seemed eerily familiar, yet he couldn't quite place it. Zoe didn't dare delay any further, taking out the dead birds she had prepared in advance and urging the professor to start immediately. He was surprised to find such comprehensive testing equipment on site. Zoe smiled, knowing that all this equipment had been scavenged from the lab of a defecting scientist. Professor Bill dissected the bird's head and discovered severe damage to its neurons, which explained why they had fallen from the sky. This felt strikingly familiar to him. The aliens had wiped out humans using strong electromagnetic radiation to destroy the brain's neural centers. He deduced it wouldn't be long before humanity on Earth faced another catastrophic disaster, whether everyone could escape unscathed or if it would end up on the brink of destruction like the parallel world remained to be seen. This chilling realization sent shivers down their spines. The professor felt that the priority was to locate the aliens' whereabouts and eliminate the threat in its infancy. At that moment, Machar's phone rang. Surprisingly, it was Emily's brother, Tom, on the line. Recently, Machar had been haunted by visions from a parallel world, especially after hearing of Emily's death, which filled him with sorrow. He had managed to find and leave his number with her brother Tom. Now, unexpectedly, Tom had reached out. It turns out he had discovered a circular mark on his girlfriend's arm, identical to the one Emily had, and found blood bags and sleeping pills in her backpack. Tom was thrown into turmoil, unable to see through the girlfriend he had been dating for several months, so he called Machar to try to understand the origin of the circular mark. Zoe, overhearing the conversation, perked up and insisted on meeting in person to discuss further. This decision was undoubtedly risky, as they had only just recently helped the professor escape from prison and were now wanted by the entire city. Zoe and Machar arrived at the meeting place but didn't show themselves immediately. Instead, after waiting for a while, they ushered Tom into the car. Zoe instructed Machar to turn off his phone before sharing the news about the alien attacks on humans. Tom was utterly bewildered and couldn't fathom his girlfriend being an alien. Zoe didn't continue to explain, but instead demanded that Tom arrange a meeting with his girlfriend. After some thought, he agreed, but not before he met with Professor Bill to demand an explanation for his sister's death. Zoe, not wanting to overstep, sought the professor's opinion on the matter. Bill knew that they could only find the aliens through Tom, and despite the danger, agreed to meet. When seeing Professor Bill, Tom was about to confront him when Bill disclosed a myriad of Tom's personal preferences, which were unknown to others. It's revealed that back in a parallel world, Bill and Tom were comrades who had experienced life and death together, reaching a point where they shared everything with each other. However, in this lifetime, this was the first meeting between Tom and Bill, compelling Tom to believe what Bill had said. He wondered if his sister was truly an ancestor of the aliens, and that Bill had killed her to save humanity. As absurd as it seemed, Tom's own visions and his girlfriend's odd behavior left him unable to discern the truth. With that, his thought of settling scores with Bill vanished. It was now time for Tom to fulfill his promise. That evening, Tom lured his girlfriend to his apartment. While she was in the bathroom, he stealthily called Zoe to inform her of the situation. However, his girlfriend was vigilant and sensed something was amiss. She prepared to leave, but just then, she saw Machar approaching through the window. She turned to run towards the back door, with Machar giving chase. Unfortunately, he was unable to catch her, but Zoe had anticipated this and was lying in wait at the back door, where she knocked the alien unconscious. Without lingering, they stuffed the unconscious girl into the car and brought her to an abandoned company building. After pouring a large bucket of water over her, she regained consciousness. Confirming the identity mark on her hand, Zoe became even more convinced and asked why the alien was extracting Tom's blood. The alien explained that her own brother was ill. Bill understood that these aliens suffered from a congenital organ failure, and only stem cells from human blood could alleviate their condition. As the younger brother of the alien ancestor Emily, Tom's blood was the best treatment. Zoe then inquired about the location of the aliens' gathering place, but the alien girl refused to answer, infuriating Zoe to the point of wanting to shoot. However, Tom stopped her, revealing his tender heart. At lunchtime, Tom approached his alien girlfriend, assuring her that he would definitely save her. Shortly after, Machar called him out. As midnight approached, Tom sneaked into the room where his girlfriend was held, cut the ropes on her hands after instructing her to be silent, and indeed, the lovesick man had not broken his promise. He was there to rescue her. They hadn't reached the elevator when Machar spotted them. Tom yelled for her to run fast, and without hesitation, his girlfriend bolted like a chicken, with Machar in hot pursuit. But she was lost to his sight quite quickly. The alien girl could hardly believe her luck in escaping, unaware that it was all a trap set by Zoe, Tom, and the others, who had placed a tracking system on her. They cautiously drove, following the signal at a slow pace, until the alien entered an apartment and then went silent. Regrettably, they could not pinpoint which room she was in. Zoe decided to wait outside, confident that the aliens would eventually reveal themselves. In the future, Catherine from a parallel world finally achieved her wish to reunite with her sister. Next on her list was to understand the black holes and aliens in this world. Richard was in the communications room, tinkering with the walkie-talkie. Catherine was curious about who he was trying to reach. Richard explained that there were other human survivors on a different street, but they had lost contact in recent days, with only a persistent hissing coming through the walkie-talkie. Catherine was all too familiar with the sound, having heard something similar at the meteorological station, likely a signal from aliens. Richard was invigorated by that and wondered what these signals could mean. Catherine had no idea either. She pulled out her formula notes from the lab, but after hours of research, she was still clueless. Then it hit her. She remembered the robot dog she had encountered before. Those alien creatures must have devices inside them for transmitting and receiving signals. If they could decipher them, they could understand the signals' meanings. Richard thought it was worth a shot and decided to search for a robot dog's corpse. Armed and ready, they left the art center. The immense black hole in the sky loomed lifelessly over the land. Richard stated they could only be exposed under the black hole for 45 minutes. Any longer would mean instant death. Then they entered a school where Richard knew several robot dogs remained. As they ventured down the empty corridors, the occasional sound of gears could be heard. Richard whispered a word of caution before moving stealthily forward, while Catherine entered the nearest hall. There, she unexpectedly saw a doll on a trolley. As she picked up the toy, pondering whether to take it, a robot dog suddenly appeared and knocked her down. Fortunately, it seemed to have no malicious intent, only the instinct to snatch the toy. At that moment, Richard entered the room, and with a few heavy blows, the robot dog was incapacitated. He then prepared to pack it up and take it with them. Meanwhile, Catherine headed to the cafeteria to scavenge some food. Out of nowhere, a masked person appeared and quickly kidnapped her. After dealing with the robot dog, Richard couldn't find Catherine. With their time outside running short, he had no choice but to return to base and figure out what to do next. Catherine, at this time, was led to a subway station. When the masked man removed his disguise, he revealed a harmless face. His name was Sam. Kidnapping Catherine was not out of malice. He needed her help because his parents had been in a coma for 4 weeks, and a few days ago he had heard about an underground hospital not far away. He hoped Catherine would assist him in transporting his parents there. He had even mapped out the route. They just had to follow the subway tunnels. But Catherine had no time for such diversions. Confident that Sam wouldn't dare shoot, she walked straight towards the exit of the subway station. Unexpectedly, Sam pounced on her, knocking her out with a heavy punch. When Catherine regained consciousness, she found her hands tied to Sam's mother. Now she had no choice but to comply and help Sam drag his parents toward the underground hospital. Every so often along the way, Sam would stop to rest, and Catherine's resentment started to fade. Sam said no matter how slim the chances are, he would have to try or he'd never be at peace. As they conversed, the sound of mechanical gears approached from a distance. Catherine recognized the sound of robot dogs. Sam tensed up. He knew some robot dogs, unaffected by the black hole, remained underground and could still have the instinct to attack humans. He shot at the robot dog and killed it. After they continued along the tunnel for a while, a few beams of light appeared ahead. Catherine shouted they were humans, and several people quickly approached them. An excited Sam inquired if they were from the hospital. Upon receiving confirmation, he explained his parents' condition. The faces of the group remained calm, indicating they had treated dozens of similar cases. They promptly carried his parents to the medical room while Catherine and Sam were led into a hall. There they saw many photographs of people on the wall. The person in charge handed them 2 bottles of water and informed them that all the pictures were of coma patients who had been successfully treated. Catherine thought of her sister and the several coma patients back with her. After several minutes had passed, there was still no word from Sam's parents, and Sam couldn't help but start to worry. After Catherine offered some consolation, she decided to check on them herself. But as soon as she entered the ward, the world seemed to spin around her. Through the dizziness, she glimpsed what lay on the beds. It's the aliens receiving blood transfusions. That's when it hit her. This place was no hospital, but an alien lair. Her realization came too late. The water she had just drunk must have been drugged. Catherine quickly succumbed to a deep unconsciousness. When she awoke, she found herself tightly bound to the bed, and in her groggy state, she sensed someone nearby. Mustering up her energy, she saw it was the alien in charge, extracting her blood. He explained he needed to test for compatibility with her blood type. Out of curiosity, Catherine asked what would happen if it didn't match. The alien didn't answer. Instead, the answer came in the form of action. Suddenly, the sound of mechanical gears came from outside the door. A robot dog approached the bed next to hers and plunged its needle into a slumbering man, instantly turning him into a corpse before being dragged out by the robot dog. Catherine realized then, if the blood type didn't match, death was the only outcome. Not long after, the alien in charge returned to draw more blood. Catherine quickly asked what blood type they were looking for. This time, he revealed their alien race was suffering from a rare disease. Only the blood of Emily's family, their alien ancestors, could alleviate the condition. Hence, they were relentlessly capturing humans to test their blood type. The chances were slim, but it was the only thing they could do. Suddenly, Catherine thought of someone. It's Emily's brother, Tom. Upon hearing this, the alien in charge pulled out a gun and threatened Catherine to disclose Tom's whereabouts. Seeing that her life and her companions' lives were on the line, Catherine reluctantly agreed to lead the aliens to Tom. The group quickly got their gear together and set off. They planned to take the subway tunnel straight to the art center, but en route, one of the aliens became so weak that he couldn't walk. It seemed their illness had reached a critical stage. After a brief rest at the subway exit, the alien led Catherine out onto the deserted streets. Looking around, not a single living creature could be seen. The two accompanying robot dogs, having lived underground, were unaffected by the black hole radiation and were thus still under alien control. This was the reason they dared to barge into the human survivors' camp in search of Tom. However, Catherine wasn't the type to value her life over her principles. She certainly wouldn't have betrayed her companion's location to save her own skin. The reason she led the enemy here was that she knew the camp's defenses were impenetrable to the small group and their two dogs. As expected, as soon as they arrived at the art center entrance, the cameras detected them. The alien leader tried the door but couldn't open it. Catherine quickly suggested that there was another back door they could use. The alien leader, now on high alert and desperate to find Tom, had to take the risk. They quickly reached the back door, but Catherine made excuses to delay entry, giving the camp guards time to prepare their defenses. When she judged the time was right, Catherine flung open the door and ducked into a corner. A barrage of gunfire erupted from inside, and in an instant, the 4 aliens and 2 robot dogs lay motionless on the ground. Unharmed, Catherine and the others quickly retreated back into the camp. She then recounted her experiences to everyone and felt they should strike back at the alien lair to rescue the captured humans. However, Richard disagreed, saying that they were barely able to protect themselves and didn't have the capacity to get involved in such matters. Even her sister Sophia thought it best not to provoke them. With no other choice, Catherine had to abandon the idea for the time being and focus on her research. Utilizing the robot dog captured by Richard, she began to decipher the alien signal bands. Meanwhile, in the present world, Zoe set a trap and successfully tracked down the location of the alien lair. Out of caution, she decided to stay outside for the night to get a better understanding of the situation. However, the aliens quickly sensed something was amiss, and what was meant to be a stakeout quickly turned into an ambush. The signal for the ambush was a glass bottle filled with gasoline. Bullets rained down on the car, and caught off guard, Zoe and her team had no choice but to abandon the vehicle and run. Tom got shot despite running the fastest. Zoe had Makar take him to safety while she stayed behind to cover their retreat. Relying on her excellent marksmanship, she eventually broke free from the alien encirclement. After hastily hijacking a car on the road, the trio sped towards the city center. By the time they finally reached the abandoned office, Tom was nearly gone. The urgent priority was to find a doctor quickly. Bill reminded everyone that their identities must remain hidden, so Zoe tapped into her network of contacts and found a suspended doctor who had broken the rules. After an emergency surgery, Tom finally passed through the critical period. The professor learned that many remnants of the alien force were left and speculated that they were surely brewing a larger conspiracy. He then thought of Catherine, who might know more secrets. When he called her, a nurse answered and informed them that Catherine had been in a coma for several days. Zoe and Mashar rushed to the hospital where she was being treated and happened upon Catherine's partner. Zoe claimed to be Catherine's friend and managed to lure him to the underground parking garage. Given Professor Bill's sensitive identity, this was the only way he could meet with the partner. When Bill learned that before falling into a coma, Catherine had used astronaut-provided data on black holes to simulate a mini black hole and had risked her own life to personally verify the theory of parallel worlds, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Catherine was indeed a genius. In any world, she was always the first to touch upon the true nature of events. Bill and his group didn't return to the abandoned office building this time. Instead, they sneaked into Catherine's partner's house. There, Bill sent an email to the astronauts at the space station, telling them everything he knew. The astronauts were thrilled to receive the message. They hadn't realized that, aside from Catherine, there were other people who also believed in the existence of parallel universes. They promptly sent all the black hole data they had detected to Professor Bill. After comparison, Bill's and Catherine's research directions were different. Through reviewing a vast array of documents and data, Bill finally deduced the aliens' conspiracy. They intended to create a black hole, using its powerful gravitational waves to collapse human brain neurons, thereby achieving the extermination of mankind. However, knowing this did not immediately suggest a way to stop it, especially since they were still wanted by the police. The next morning, Bill sensed something was wrong and urged everyone to leave quickly. Sure enough, their whereabouts had been reported. Several police cars soon appeared at the intersection ahead. Zoe cursed and was about to turn around and flee when she realized that there were police cars blocking the rear as well. She had no choice but to slam on the gas pedal, forcefully creating an escape route. After reaching a deserted street, Zoe once again demonstrated her car theft skills. It wasn't until they switched to a new car that everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, their hearts were heavy. How much better it would be if there were no alien invasion. Professor Bill just wanted to enjoy a cup of coffee in peace. Meanwhile, at the space station, the astronauts experienced another strange event. They managed to capture a faint radio wave spilling out from the black hole using their radio. Both were wide-eyed with astonishment. It indicated that a parallel universe might very well exist inside the black hole. The astronauts decided to reposition the radio wave sensor to align it with the black hole, hoping to receive a stronger signal. Adjusting the sensor, however, required going outside the space station to manually operate, which was no simple task. While unscrewing a bolt, an astronaut's hand trembled and a screw flew off. He had to find a spare screw quickly, as time was running out with the intense radiation from the sun approaching. Fortunately, he was fast enough to complete the adjustment in time and made it back to the airlock. Just before entering, he once again envisioned the space station breaking apart, which made the astronaut even more convinced that there must be a parallel universe inside the black hole. Sure enough, after successfully aligning the radio wave sensor with the black hole, the signal they received became much stronger. They could even clearly make out the content of conversations happening inside. The two astronauts listened intently, confirming that the discussion in the signal was indeed about aliens. Meanwhile, in the parallel universe, Catherine had successfully decrypted the alien signal frequency. Just as she tried calling for a test, the astronaut far away on the space station heard Catherine's voice. It gave him the surreal feeling of being in a sci-fi movie. Catherine was also thrilled, amazed at how advanced the alien communication methods were to evade the grasp of a black hole. However, she failed to notice that the camera feed showed a new group of aliens appearing until they began to violently hit the back door. Only then did the guards at the camp realize they were under attack. It was too late to summon more hands. They could only quietly guard behind the wooden doors of the hall. Richard pressed his ear against the door to listen, but didn't detect any sound. He quietly opened the door to check, only to be met with a barrage of gunfire in the darkness. A human guard was shot dead instantly. Richard quickly shut the door, holding his breath in tension. He was acutely aware that a greater crisis was imminent. The alien groups, leading their robot dogs, had cornered the few human survivors in a basement. Richard thought of a risky plan, to use the ventilation ducts to get behind the alien tribe and catch them off guard. But he underestimated the aliens. The faint noises made by the robot dogs as they crawled through the ducts were immediately detected. Everyone held their breath, daring not to make a sound, as the robot dogs continued to approach the ventilation ducts, using the handrails. A soldier moved close to the wall of the duct, trying to determine the robot dog's position, only to be nailed down by the enemy. The robot dog then quickly crawled into the duct. Seeing this, Richard turned and ran for his life. The moment he crawled out of the duct, he fired wildly at the robot dog behind him, managing to kill it before running out of bullets. However, his surprise attack tactic had failed. The aliens' robot dogs were too difficult to handle, and with the camp's manpower, it was impossible to break through. Catherine suddenly had an idea. The reason the aliens were attacking was to get their hands on Tom's blood, which they must have believed to be of some value. So they decided to inject a virus into his bloodstream that would damage the aliens' internal organs. Richard then stepped forward to negotiate with the aliens outside, offering them the unconscious Tom as a bargaining chip. Once the aliens achieved their goal and obtained Tom's blood, they spared the remaining human survivors in the camp and vanished without a trace. It was a clever move that not only resolved the crisis at the camp, but also wiped out the hateful alien invaders. However, the reality back on Earth was quite the opposite. After months of adjustments, the alien leader had finally succeeded in activating their device, creating a micro-black hole that began to take shape. The first to notice the anomaly were the astronauts on the space station, who detected that the black hole's gravitational pull had suddenly increased several-fold. They immediately relayed this information to Professor Bill, who realized that this was all the work of the aliens. They had created the micro-black hole to exploit the gravitational pull between it and the giant black hole on Earth's surface. Once the giant black hole began to draw in the atmosphere, the situation would become like that of the future world, with the majority of humanity dying from intense radiation. But by now, it was too late to do anything. Even if they destroyed the micro-black hole, they couldn't stop the approach of the larger one. What the professor didn't know was that the crisis in front of them was not the only one. The female alien leader, seeing her primary mission accomplished and with no further concerns, forcefully extracted the location of the professor and the others from Tom's alien girlfriend. Then she led a full-scale attack on them. The aliens first captured one of the teammates who was out replenishing supplies, and then encountered Tom on his way home. After leaving two to guard them, the rest stormed into the abandoned office where the professor and the others were caught off guard. Zoe got shot accidentally, and just as it seemed that Bill and the rest were facing annihilation, another twist of fate occurred. Seeing his alien girlfriend, Tom's old feelings resurfaced, and her heart was touched by his lingering affection. In a surprising turn, she attacked and strangled the alien guard, while the teammate tangled with another. After a struggle, Tom and his companions managed to break free. Without hesitation, they picked up the guards' pistols and took the elevator to the abandoned office, catching the aliens off guard. The female leader was surrounded, and Zoe, realizing they would get no useful information from her, did not hesitate to end her life with a single shot. Finally, the last of the alien invaders were eliminated. Before the group had a chance to catch their breath, the sky suddenly lit up with a dazzling aurora, a sign that the black hole in space was rapidly approaching. While the general public might still be unaware, the end of the world was imminent. The government agencies that had sensed something was amiss had already retreated underground to observe this strange celestial phenomenon. Only Professor Bill knew that this was the method the aliens were using to annihilate the human race on Earth. In a somewhat desperate state, he managed to contact the astronauts on the space station. Unexpectedly, they revealed a piece of crucial information. Catherine had once speculated that the aliens in the future world had used black holes to achieve space travel and arrive in the present world. A thought struck Professor Bill. He believed that if Catherine could use the black hole data controlled by the aliens to shut it down, the black hole crisis threatening the present world could be averted. However, the signal interference was now too severe, and the astronauts were unable to contact Catherine in the future world. All they knew was that she was currently at an art exhibition center in London. Professor Bill was frantic, realizing that the only solution now was to personally travel to the future world to find Catherine and have her shut down the black hole. Tom and Machar, who had escaped injury in the previous battle, immediately decided to go together. But before they could embark on their journey, they needed to find Catherine's partner, as he was the only one who knew the technical parameters of the particle accelerator that Catherine had used to travel to the future world. The group quickly drove to the university where the lab was located. Given the urgency, they had no time for explanations. They overpowered the security guards and burst in. They immediately headed for the lab housing the particle accelerator. At this time, Catherine's partner entered the parameters and activated the device. A micro-black hole that served as a gateway to the future world instantly formed. Without any hesitation, Professor Bill placed his hand into the stream of particles at light speed. As his body shook violently, he felt a sudden dizziness in his head. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in an unfamiliar environment. He knew he had finally returned to the future world. Gazing up at the sky where the black hole loomed like an ominous cloud overhead, the professor realized if he didn't succeed this time, the present world would face the same fate. Before long, Professor Bill arrived at the art center where Catherine was located. After introducing himself, he was finally able to meet with Catherine. He immediately explained that he needed Catherine to figure out a way to shut down the black hole in the sky. To Catherine, although the idea was bold, it was theoretically feasible because she had already mastered the data related to the black hole's bandwidth and frequency. If they could emit gravitational waves of the same frequency from the ground towards the black hole, the entanglement could likely result in its closure. The professor added that in order to send gravitational waves from the ground to the black hole, they must relay through the space station, which would receive the gravitational waves emitted from Earth's surface, and then aim them at the black hole. Richard remembered that not far from there, at the meteorological station, there was a huge gravitational wave emitter. With some luck, it might still be operational. Before long, Bill, Catherine, and Richard gathered their equipment and embarked once again on their world-saving mission. In the underground tunnels, there were still a few stray robot dogs patrolling. Fortunately, with Richard as their escort, they were quickly dealt with. The group didn't dare to be careless, walking along the desolate streets under the threatening black hole above. Just as they were about to reach the meteorological station, another robot dog appeared. Caught off guard, the professor was tackled to the ground. Richard fired repeatedly, forcing the robot dog to retreat and helping Bill into the weather building. But the robot dog was not ready to give up. Richard had no choice but to block the door with his body, urging Bill and Catherine to hurry up and get to work. The two wasted no time and ran towards the top floor. However, the robot dog quickly broke through the door and engaged Richard in a fierce battle. By this time, Bill and Catherine had made it to the control room. First, they fired up the diesel generator and then proceeded to switch on the controller. However, there was a noticeable change in the professor's complexion. It turned out that just moments earlier, he had been impaled in the abdomen by a robot dog. But he made no fuss about it. Instead, he bore the excruciating pain and went up to the rooftop terrace with Catherine. They had to manually calibrate the emitter so the space station could receive the gravitational waves. Professor Bill speculated that when the black hole closed, the strong radiation it would emit might not significantly affect humanity on the ground due to the protection of the atmosphere. However, the astronauts on the space station would likely not be as fortunate. Weighing the consequences, they communicated the situation to the space station via radio. The astronauts accepted the mission. To save all of humanity on Earth, they deemed it worth risking their lives. As both parties were ready, Catherine began to input the parameters to launch the gravitational waves. Before long, the space station received the signal, and a piercing high-frequency noise erupted. The astronauts worked rapidly to redirect the received signal towards the nearby black hole. Excitement filled their eyes as the energy of the black hole visibly began to weaken, proving that their plan was working. However, the electromagnetic radiation caused by this success grew increasingly intense. The space station's alarms blared loudly, and the meteorological station where Catherine was began to shake. Overworked from the mental strain and affected by electromagnetic radiation, she collapsed to the ground, convulsing severely. Professor Bill, losing blood and ignoring his own state, managed to drag himself to the computer because the last segment of parameters had yet to be completed. Finally, just as he collapsed, he managed to hit the confirm key. As a result, the high-frequency sound from the space station reached a crescendo in an instant. The astronauts watched as the black hole evaporated at a fast speed. However, the energy it released was so immense that the space station couldn't withstand it and began to disintegrate. The two astronauts, as if they had anticipated this outcome, held hands and smiled, welcoming death with serenity. At the same time, all the buildings on Earth were hit by a strong radiation surge. Fortunately, the atmosphere provided protection, preventing catastrophic consequences. Sometime later, Catherine eventually woke up from her unconscious state. Seeing the shining sunlight outside the window, she knew her plan had been a success. The black hole that had loomed overhead for years was finally gone. Sadly, Professor Bill, having lost too much blood, had closed his eyes forever. Catherine, holding back her sorrow, silently left. To her surprise, downstairs, she encountered the injured Richard. The two supported each other and headed towards the camp. In space, the two astronauts drifted lonely like duckweed in the vast universe. Yet they felt no despair, for they had successfully closed the black hole. The mysterious auroras that had appeared in the present world as a result also vanished. Most of Earth's population may never know that just a short while ago, they were on the brink of entering the afterlife. It was thanks to these silently sacrificing heroes that they were spared from extinction. Zoe, despite being branded a fugitive, found high-ranking officials and laid out the aliens' various schemes and the contributions of Professor Bill and others in detail. Even if some were skeptical, the space data that could be monitored shut them up. In the end, Zoe was reinstated in her position, and along with Mashar and Professor Bill, was cleared of all charges. By this point, Professor Bill had fallen into a permanent coma, and Catherine was in a similar state, though her condition was much better. In a future world, she now basked in the sunlight with her sister, immersed in the joy of being surrounded by family love. They no longer had to worry about the troubles of black holes or fear alien attacks. Catherine had once visited an alien gathering place, getting to know that due to them being injected with Tom's virus-infected blood, the aliens all ultimately died of organ failure. And that concludes this whole drama. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.